In between seasons, I tracked down Rachel's first husband, Todd. If you recall, Rachel told me that she never married Todd. Well, I found out that Rachel did marry Todd when she was just 20 years old and living in Houston. When I reached out to Todd, I wasn't sure what to expect. Would he return my call? Would he want to talk about something that happened over 25 years ago? And to my surprise, Todd was open to talking with me. And what he shared was heartbreaking. During our conversation, Todd said something that struck me. I had shared all of the information I could with him. Pictures of Rachel in the hospital, the fake pregnancy pictures. And his first response to me was, "I'm so sorry you went through this. I'm so sorry that you were caught up in Rachel's web." And what I would come to learn is that Todd was still dealing with the scars from the relationship he had with Rachel. At that point, almost 25 years ago. Rachel periodically would disappear during their marriage. At one point, she came home after a couple of days after doing this, looking a little worse for the wear. She told Todd that she had been trafficked and beaten up. He was a cop at the time. He couldn't find anything. Todd went to find a friend of his that worked for the FBI, and together they looked into it. And they found absolutely nothing that was truth in any of Rachel's story. Todd confronted Rachel, told Rachel that he knew about what she had been doing, working as a model in adult men's magazines, working as a dancer and an escort. Rachel's response to Todd was, "Who the fuck do you think you are to dig into my life?" Imagine that, being married to a woman. You catch her cheating, and her response is, "Who do you think you are for digging into my life?" As unfathomable as it is, that was her response. Todd spoke to his folks about it. They didn't believe him initially. Todd had to show them irrefutable evidence. Imagine what that must have been like for Todd, to have his parents take Rachel's side. Todd realized that he had to get out, and he did. The next day, he put the house up for sale, filed for divorce. And I did something with Todd that I didn't do with anyone else. I gave him the first 12 episodes of this podcast. I wanted for him to have an understanding of what I had gone through during my time with Rachel. It took him about a week. He messaged me back, and he said, I don't think that we ever get over these things that happened to us. But tonight, when I finished your podcast, I turned to my partner and I said, I'm so lucky, and we're both so lucky to have found each other after what we've been through. And he told her he loved her very much. And I was moved by that. I was moved because men don't tend to share. And this was a big share. Sharing with his partner was one thing, but sharing with me was another. It strengthened my resolve in a way and allowed me to push forward and continue to find everyone that I could. At one point, I found another man by the name of Mike Cherry. Mike had a relationship with Rachel in 2016 at a time that she told me she was married to Bobby. That was not true. She sucked Mike into a relationship that included love bombing him with notes and letters and pictures. And her signature move.
She told me she was pregnant.
The ultrasound, the fake ultrasound. This is one that was one with twins in it. Mike found out that Rachel was lying, found out that the ultrasound wasn't hers. And I'll share that entire story with you on an upcoming episode. I posted some clips from the interview I did with Mike on our social media channels. You You can check those out if you want to see them.
Said that she was, divorced.
The other man I found was a man by the name of Brad. Brad was Rachel's first boyfriend in high school. She went to Brad at one point when she realized she had to get out of Mauriceville and Beaumont, get herself to Houston, that she had a way to get Brad to do that with her. And that was by using her signature move, showing him an ultrasound too. This was really the first record that I have of her doing it. She took her sister Sherry's ultrasound, though. She was connected to this one. Folded Sherry's name and information down, handed it to Brad and said, "Guess what, Brad? You're going to be the daddy of twins." And Brad moved to Houston with Rachel. Couple, they didn't make it. At one point, when I was chatting with Brad about his time with Rachel, he said to me, "I was reminded of a time that Rachel disappeared and her mother couldn't find her. And her mom called, asked me to go try to see if I could find her somewhere. He said, I had an idea where she was and I went and tracked her down. She was at a house party. I walked into the house party and I found Rachel walking out of a room with another man. She approached me immediately and she said, 'Please don't say anything, don't do anything.' I was attacked. I was assaulted." Brad had all he could do to hold himself back, but he listened to his girl, respected her wishes, and that was the end of that. Eventually, Brad and Rachel would split up. Rachel ended up getting with Todd. She and Todd got married. That didn't last. Todd caught her doing a whole bunch of things, including catching her with Bobby. The two of them had some sort of an interaction. I didn't really get into it with Todd about that. But it's a lot. It's all a lot. Clearly, the road to the truth was a difficult one for Rachel to find her way to. Her inner GPS was way out of calibration. The truth with her was a slippery slope. It often comes with a side of consequences, which she just was never prepared to deal with. I tracked down Bobby between seasons, and I'll share my conversations with Bobby with you. There's a lot to get into as it relates to Bobby. One of the common things that people say to me about this podcast and about this story is, just when I think I've heard it all, you drop something else on us. And that time is right now for a little bomb drop. In between seasons, during this time, Rachel had been pursuing Mark in court, in family court, for child support. And Mark is asking the court for DNA tests. Wants to know that these girls, the 3 minor children that she absconded from the home with, are actually his girls. One night about 1.5 years ago, Mark called me. He said, "What do you know about my second daughter?" And I said, "Well, I know what Rachel told me in 2012 when she and I connected, and that was that that daughter was the product of an assault, that you were not the father." And Mark said, "Well, part of that story is correct. The part about me not being her father. Rachel was never assaulted. She had an affair with a man. And that affair led to the birth of daughter number 2, and he was just finding that out after 17 years of raising that girl." The way Rachel told it to me was that in 2006, she and Mark had one of those fights. Mark may have gotten a little bit violent. He was angry. She split, went and had a couple drinks somewhere, fended off some advances from potential suitors, and on her way out of the bar, one of those suitors that she said no to wasn't taking no for an answer, pulled her into his truck, and had his way with Rachel. That led to the birth of this daughter number 2. And I had no reason not to believe this. I couldn't wrap my arms around the fact that someone could lie about something like that. I had no suspicion at that point in time that Rachel was a liar. The fact that she was comfortable enough sharing this detail with me, I thought, she trusts me. I'm going to keep the secret. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Around that time in 2012, she began painting this picture of being an abused woman, an abused spouse. Painted the picture of Mark physically and sexually and emotionally assaulting her whenever he wanted to do that. She actually claims that after she was assaulted that night, he punished her for it, for her behavior, for being reckless. Imagine that. Your wife gets assaulted, and your response is to punish her. Well, Mark never did that. We know that now. That was just Rachel painting the picture for me. And that picture was an ugly one. It was just an alternate twist on reality, I suppose. And regarding Mark, I thought he knew the identity of this daughter. I thought he knew the story. I was blown away when he called and told me that he knew who the father was. This was not a monster from Rachel's past. This was a man that Rachel worked for at the Special Olympics in the Santa Clarita area. He and Rachel worked together and then some. These are just more lies from Rachel. And here's the thing about lies. They lead to more lies. They unravel. It's like pulling a thread out of a sweater. It just keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going until the sweater is just undone. It was actually Rachel's sister that tipped Mark off to the affair with this man when Rachel was working at the Special Olympics. Mark sent me a picture of his daughter number 2, and this man, and the resemblance was uncanny. Mark said, I always thought she didn't look anything like me, and she barely looks anything like Rachel. Mark and I both did some research. We found this man. When I tracked him down, I found out, much to my dismay, that my number was already blocked. I tracked him down on LinkedIn. He blocked me quickly there. Rachel had gotten to this man. I told him to stay away from me. Told him that I was going to fill his head with lies, is what I'm guessing. That she didn't know who I was, that I was being paid to do this podcast and put these videos out. I guess she was worried that I'd track him down like I tracked Brad down, like I tracked Mike Cherry down, like I tracked her first husband Todd down, and her sister Sherry, and everyone else that I could. Rachel was just in a full court press, defense, man to man, making sure I didn't get to anyone that knew her truth. I spoke with you about the scam that Rachel was running on the girls at the airport, completely different than the cancer scam with me. This is multi-layered. Let's move on to that situation at the airport. Remember, she accused that male coworker, who will remain nameless, of assaulting her. That story. She lied about being assaulted, and then she lied about spending days in the hospital as a result of whatever he gave her. Rachel said to one of the coworkers at the airport, I would have had sex with him anyway. He didn't need to drug me. The coworkers were stunned by that story. They began to ostracize this man, and they pushed Rachel to press charges. But as it turns out, it was something that just needed to be recanted. Rachel needed to recant that story because it was all lies. And the way Rachel recovered with her coworkers was that she invented another lie. She told her coworkers that daughter number 2, was in the hospital as a result of an attempt at self-harm of the most serious kind. The girls rallied around Rachel. They provided gifts. They did all kinds of things to take care of this girl in any way that they could. At one point, when the story started to come out that nothing that was coming out of Rachel's mouth was true, she wasn't a pilot, wasn't a nurse, and she faked cancer with me, Mark got together with the girls at the airport. And that was a tough dinner. It was a tough meeting. The girls asked about daughter number 2, and Mark said, well, she's fine. Why do you ask? And the girl said, well, Rachel said she attempted self-harm and she's in the hospital. Mark pulled out his phone, showed him a picture of daughter number 2 at the prom the week before. The girls were devastated. There's a little thing at the airports around the country, that is commonplace for baggage handlers. Really anyone that works at the airport, they trade shifts. And they do that so they can keep their flight benefits. They don't miss work. They don't call out. It's gotten so bad for Rachel at the San Luis Obispo County Airport that she and her boyfriend Russ now have to pay people to take their shifts. Imagine how bad it is. Something that's an industry standard. It's an accepted practice. They have to pay people to cover their shifts. At one point, over the summer of 2024, I became aware of a lot of what was going on with Mark and Rachel and how Rachel had set Mark up, including indicating that Mark was sending her text messages from a number that wasn't his. At one point, I had a conversation with Mark about it, and I was going to testify on Mark's behalf because I knew Rachel was planning on setting Mark up. She had told me that, and I had information that would benefit Mark in this case. And the subject of the text messages came up. That the number that Rachel was receiving those messages from wasn't a number that Mark owned. And I said, that's interesting. And I sent Rachel a message in May of 2024, sent her a picture of myself and said, I would have given my life for yours, and I almost did. That was sent at 9 o'clock at night. At 3 o'clock the next morning, I received a text message from a number that I didn't recognize. It was Rachel from a 714 number, a number that I didn't recognize. When I mentioned that to Mark's attorney and to Mark, they asked for the phone number that I received a text from that wasn't Rachel's. And I read it to the attorney, and she said, read that back to me. And she said, will you do me a favor and sign a declaration telling me this story, send me the screenshot, your call logs, text log, all that stuff. And I said, sure, is that the same number? And she said, oh, attorney-client privilege, I can't tell you that. Well, as it turns out, those numbers were related to each other. I did what Mark's lawyer asked me to do. I signed a declaration, put it together. And then I prepared myself to go to court. And at court in July 26th of 2024, I would see Rachel for the first time since going our separate ways in Santa Barbara on May 5th of 2022, when she was beginning chemotherapy treatment. Walked into the courtroom. Walked right by her. I got on the stand. I raised my right hand. I swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. And there I went. And Rachel, in open court, denied ever having any sort of relationship of substance with me. I couldn't believe it. I was stunned. But I guess I shouldn't be, knowing about her game. She wouldn't make eye contact with me. Wouldn't look at me. Just sat there shaking her head, disagreeing with everything that I said, everything that I testified to. All lies, according to Rachel. As I was getting ready to go and testify, to take that drive from Vegas to Paso, Agent Grasso, the producer of this podcast, my friend Matt, said, I just need to go on record and tell you that I am against you going to court. I'm against you testifying against her. I think you'll get another opportunity to see her in an orange jumpsuit. He said, I don't want to collect call from the San Luis Obispo County Detention Center from you. I said, it's all good. We had a laugh. And I said, I'm in check. I prepared myself and I went and did my thing. The judge really didn't pay attention to anything I had to say. Mark and Rachel were so toxic that she, I don't think, knew what to do with herself. Anyway, the long or the short of it is that the judge accepted all of Rachel's evidence, and Rachel got an extension on her temporary restraining order to extend it for a year. Rachel took all of that evidence, every single bit of it, and then some. And she walked across the street to the Paso Robles Police Department. And she gave them that evidence. She said, "You need to arrest him. You need to put him in prison. He's a felon." And they turned around and did a small investigation. And then they arrested Mark. Felony traffic stop. Mark went to jail for 10 days, and he's still a year later wearing an ankle monitor. At one point, the girls at the airport told Rachel that they thought she was lying, and she sent one of them a text message. "Here's my nursing license, here's my pilot's license, and I'm not going to defend myself any further from any of these insane accusations." And then at the court hearing, some of the women at the airport were due to testify against Rachel. So Rachel did what victims do. She went to her employer, American in Piedmont, and said, "The girls are bullying me. They're getting involved in my personal business." And American Airlines, who knew about the fake pilot's license and Rachel's lies, defended Rachel. They gave her a new assignment. They brought her inside so she didn't have to work with the other baggage handlers. She played the victim, and she got the new assignment. I wrote to Robert Isom at American Airlines, the CEO. Sent him an email, wrote to 10 other people below him in the organization. Got read receipts from everybody, including from him. I thought maybe they'd be interested in what Rachel was doing at the San Luis Obispo County Airport, the American Airlines in Piedmont station, but they never responded to me. I reached out to the FAA. They did an investigation, and because Rachel's pilot certificate, while a forgery, was not an actual hard copy, it was a digital copy, and that's difficult to prove forgery on, apparently. We did find the woman behind the nursing license that Rachel was utilizing. The California Board of Nursing is a public database. We tracked her down, spoke with her a couple times. She thought about coming on the podcast and then decided against it, unfortunately. We found the owner of the pilot's license as well. He didn't want any part of this. Rachel was telling the girls at the airport that she was working for Mercy Air as a helicopter pilot and a trauma nurse. I reached out to them. Mercy Air at least had the courtesy to respond to me. They had their legal department reach out and say, "We're not aware of who she is. She never worked for this company, and we don't know her." Mercy Air does operate out of the Paso Robles Airport, and that's important to our story because as of the production of this episode, Rachel's working part-time for a company called Lloyd's Aviation. Lloyd's provides maintenance to different aircraft at the airport. One of those companies that's up at that airport is Mercy. I reached out to them again a year later and said, "Just so you know, the woman that said she was working for your organization now works at the same airport and may actually be providing maintenance, at least the scheduling of it, for Lloyd's Aviation." Anyway, Rachel started that job in October of 2025. And within the first month, she called out 3 or 4 times, including one of those times after a trip, an anniversary trip with Russ to Paris. Rachel claimed to Lloyd's Aviation the day after returning that on the flight home, she suffered an explosion of her tubes. It's one of those things that, if it were to actually have happened, would have been a mid-flight medical emergency, would have caused that plane to have to land in a hurry. Would have been a miracle, though. Rachel had her tubes tied in 2010, and Russ, he had a vasectomy in 2010. Would have been the immaculate conception if it were true, if Rachel did become pregnant and then have this incident happen. One thing that terrifies Rachel is that Someone around her could know the truth. Someone could be onto her game. Number one enemy of the narcissist is someone that knows their truth. She and every other narcissist will do everything in their power to eliminate that threat. People who come too close to the truth, they're not just an inconvenience. They are dangerous to her. They're the enemy, dangerous to her survival. In Rachel's world, survival means maintaining these lies at any cost. If you get too close, she'll either push you away or destroy you in some way. It's a classic tactic of the narcissist. They never, ever can take blame. The problem is always on someone else. To further illustrate that point, the social media sites were created for this podcast: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. Rachel and her boyfriend Russ and one of her daughters were telling people that I was hired by Mark to tell my story, that Rachel didn't even know who I was. I was just a guy that made up the story with her husband. She told people at work none of this was true. I don't even know who that man is. At one point over the summer last summer, Russ and Rachel told co-workers that they were planning a vacation to Colorado to go helicopter camping. I had to Google that to see if it's actually a thing. Anyway, Russ said they were going to get a helicopter and go to Colorado, and Rachel was going to fly the family unit, the new family unit, around. As it turns out, that was just a trip that they flew to Colorado to go on a softball trip with daughter number 3. When I would question Rachel about things, she would say, it sounds like you don't trust me. And if you don't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be together. She gaslit me into questioning my own reality, my own sanity. I thought maybe I was being paranoid about something. I grew despondent under the weight of these tactics. She would ask me routinely to send her pictures of me, selfies, videos, whatever. She would say, I want to see your eyes. Let me see your eyes. Your eyes tell on you. I know when you're not doing well. I know when you're not holding up. The narcissist needs to be the captain of their own ship, dictating the narrative and deciding who gets to be part of their story and who doesn't. Rachel's behavior towards Madison, the daughter formerly known as Madison, her oldest daughter, is the perfect example of that. She caught her mother cheating. She shared it with her sisters. And Rachel said, our family is being pulled apart and destroyed because of you. It was very clear early on that Madison made her decision. She was going to stand by Mark because she knew. And Rachel's response to that was to shut Madison's phone off and stop paying for college. Rachel at one point cut off communication between Madison and her 3 sisters. Imagine that. Alienating not only your daughter, but alienating your daughter from your other daughters. This is what she does. This is her pattern. This is what they do. When Todd found out about her cheating, he heard what she said to him. It doesn't matter who it is. Your own flesh and blood doesn't make any difference. The response to Todd to me was really crazy. Who are you to dig into my life? F you. I don't know. What would you do? I don't blame Todd for turning around and selling the house and filing for divorce. When someone who's married cheats, they're not just cheating on their spouse, they're cheating on their entire family. Her game is to do what she does for attention. Her con wasn't about money, wasn't about greed in the traditional sense. After everything came out, Mark sent me a screenshot of a text exchange with Rachel, and it's one that I've saved in my phone for whatever reason. She said, I'm sorry, I lied to Harry about cancer for attention. I'm not that person anymore. It was 90 days after the affair with me was exposed and the affair with Russ was exposed. I had a phone call that day with Mark and his 4 daughters. It was like a family conference call. The woman that couldn't stop cheating, couldn't stop lying, couldn't stop deceiving. Rachel did her best after that to destroy me and destroy the relationship between Madison and her sisters, and it's what's led to what's going on now between Mark and Rachel. The domestic violence restraining order, the charges against Mark, all of that as a result of Rachel just not being able to come clean. Rachel's daughters now know about multiple affairs, the affairs with Russ and with me while she was married, obviously, and is still married, but the other men as well. They're learning it just like you're learning it. And there's one other bomb I gotta drop on you right now. What if I told you that the man Mark alluded to that Rachel ran off and married during their first year of marriage was someone that we found? What if we found the marriage certificate? What if we found him? Rachel married this man in 2004. Creates a small issue because Rachel was 7 months into her second marriage date with Mark, second ceremony. Coming up on the Rachel Cancer Scam, the next episode, you're going to hear from the daughter formerly known as Madison. We're going to get into all kinds of things on the next episode of The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam.